John, I'm gonna turn my video off for a minute while I eat, and so just you tell me if you want me to, if or when you want me to scroll or change to a different document or anything.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Ken. Welcome, everybody. This is John Freeman from GLREA. Um, we are, this is a business meeting of business members to talk about issues concerning our business members. And the main topic for today is the new set of interconnection rules. Now, I'm going to say at the outset that most of this stuff that is in the interconnection rules, I don't understand. So my role here is to provide you with the information and hopefully in an organized fashion. So then you can then uh, go over the information and understand it. There are a couple of items that we talked about last October at the last meeting that I will focus on. It was regarding whether the capacity of a battery could be a part of the 110% calculation for residential. And then there was about the whole location of panels on a roof and whether that should be factored in. Um, so we'll get to that in a few minutes. But I did send out three documents yesterday, and this is the first one. This is a relatively short memo that is kind of the main document that you can then use to go to the other two documents. And so I want to go over this and then we'll go from there. And feel free to ask any questions. So to begin with, the Michigan Public Service Commission late last year, December 5th, after a couple year process, they approved a new set of interconnection and just distributed generation standards rules. Now, these new rules was essentially a negotiated settlement between DTE and a number of organizations. And to be perfectly honest, GLREA was not a part of that because we have limited capacity and we're focused on some of the main Public Service Commission cases with DTE and others. But obviously, I know how important the interconnection rules are, and we talked about some of this last October. And so I wanted to provide this information for all of you, so then you can be able to understand for yourself how this affects your business and you can be up to speed on it. So there is a link there to the order. You can just click on it. It takes you to the Michigan Public Service Commission. Now, Ken, go down a little bit more. Um, this order is a couple hundred pages long, and it is a series of documents that are strung together in one overall document. And what I have done is I've broken down the lengthy document into different sections. Now, as my memo says, there is no reference to sections in the larger document that you can click on by going to that link. I have just broken it out by different key documents, and then I've assigned a section number to it so that you have a sense of how big this document is. And on the far right, I've indicated how many pages is within that specific document that is a part of the larger document. So let's go back to, but not yet, Ken. Let's go back up. So the first part of that major document is the actual order by the Michigan Public Service Commission. This is, if you've never seen an order before, this is the legal order that they have enacted. And it's 6 pages long, so it's relatively short, double spaced, and it's written for it's written so most people can understand it. It's not full of legal terms or anything. The second section is the actual settlement kind of the stipulation and settlement agreement and which organizations were a part of this. And so you'll see DTE, you'll see three or four other five groups, including EIBC, which I'll get to in a couple of minutes. The third section is the actual settlement terms. Now, this section is very important, and I actually sent all of you a copy of this settlement terms in yesterday's email, and I sent Vamshi a copy of it just a few minutes ago. So this is the actual settlement agreement that was reached, and it's broken out into terms. And we'll get to that in a minute. And that PowerPoint that Ken just momentarily flipped to, we'll get to that in a few minutes. That's a PowerPoint that EIBC put together that Laura was kind enough to send to me. And there's no point in me duplicating it when she has done a fine job or her staff did. Okay, let me just continue going. Um, the fourth section are lengthier explanation for these new rules, and it's broken out into two sections. The fourth section is for level one and level two projects of less than 150 kilowatts for AC. And then the fifth section are the new explanation for these rules for levels three, four, and five projects. And these are for projects that are bigger than 150 kilowatts. So, and we'll go over this a little bit more in a few minutes. The next section, section 6, is it's also called attachment B, and it is a specific section focusing on Rider 18 and then Rider 16 of legacy net metering. They call them supplemental interconnection procedures. Um, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes too. So Ken, why don't you scroll down a little bit more, please? So then go, yeah, perfect. So then section 7 is a construction agreement. I think it's a model form that DTE is put together for people to use. The eighth section, maybe it's, yeah, I'm just giving you the title, Generator Interconnection Operating Agreement for 4 and 5 levels. It's 20 pages long. And then the rest of sections 9, 10, and 11 are relatively small other documents within the overall document. For instance, under the ninth section, there's a wiring diagram. And then there is a protection, communication, configuration requirement and settings. Section 10, attachment A construction agreement. And then there's like section 11 is commissioning checklist. Section 12 you can ignore. That's just a legal term to show that, in fact, all the parties to the case, in fact, received a copy of the order and then all these documents. So you can ignore section 12, but I didn't want to ignore for purposes of all of you because you'll see it if you go to the large document. It's at the very end. Now, yesterday, I sent a copy of the 14-page settlement terms. And then I also sent you a copy of EIBC's PowerPoint presentation. So, yeah, why don't we, okay, right. That is okay, Ken, let's go to the next document, the term right there. No, go back. go to the interconnection terms. Yes, that one. That's perfect. This is the actual settlement terms that DTE and a number of organizations came to an agreement on that the Public Service Commission approved. All settlement agreements have to be approved by the Public Service Commission. Now, generally, if all the parties to the case can come to an agreement, then generally the Public Service Commission will approve it. So this settlement terms was negotiated between DTE and four or five different groups. And again, you can see which groups they were in the larger document under the second section. But you can see that, these are the terms. Now, I don't know if there's any way of, if people can, I mean, I guess the best way to move forward on this is to go to the PowerPoint presentation. Um, because I think that's probably the easiest way to do this. And I'll try and explain how it's structured. So why don't you scroll down, Ken? The first the first slide is just the history of this case. You can see how it started back in 2023 and went through a number of different permutations, and it was finally approved on December 5th. Now, next slide. This is the first slide of EIBC's PowerPoint presentation. Now, the reference at the top, terms 1 through 4, reference the 1 through 4 terms on that 14-page term document. Um, so, so this content here is, can I move the screen? No. This content, can you see my arrow? Am I clicking on? Probably not. Probably only Ken can do it. Anyway, so on this is covered for the material modification, which I think is a term of art. I think all of you business owners probably know what that means, but that is where the new terms address this issue. Now, at the bottom of this slide, you'll see pages 16 to 18 of level 1 and level 2 procedures. Now, don't go back, go back up,
Mhm.
Ken. And then pages 17 through 19 of level 3, 4, and 5. Now, these pages reference the longer sections in the main document that go into a further explanation of these new terms. And as you hopefully recall, just a few minutes ago, there was one specific section about, I think it was 70 pages long, that covered levels 1 and 2. And then there was a second section, exactly. Exactly, Ken. And then the second section is number fifth section, attachment B. That's for levels 4, 5, and 3, 4, and 5. And so these terms 1 through 4 on material modification, they're explained more fully in pages 6 to 18 for level 1 and 2, and then 17 to 19 of 3, 4, and 5. But just to be redundant here, 16 to 18 is for one of those sections of level 1 and 2, and 17, 18, and 19 pages are for the second section that Ken just bounced back to for levels 3, 4, and 5. So I hope I'm being clear with how to navigate um, these two, well, three documents, the PowerPoint, the 14-page term sheet, and then the overall document that contains the 70 pages, which gives a fuller explanation for 1 and 2, and then the 74 pages for a fuller explanation of 3, 4, and 5. Okay, let's go down to the next one. Um, okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Term 5, unintentional islanding. That's term number 5 in the term sheet. And you can see some key information that Laura put in there, which hopefully, again, the business owners on this call will understand. I can't, I don't understand this well enough at all to try and even attempt to explain it. Um, but the bottom line is that um, I think based upon the negotiated settlement between DTE and a number of our allies, that these new interconnection rules should be better than what they were previously. So again, um, the unintentional islanding term five, it's more fully explained on pages 31 and 32 of that lengthier level one and level two document in the main document. And then for levels three, four, and five, it's pages 32 through 34. So depending upon what kinds of projects your business does, you ought to focus on understanding these rules, whether you're 150 kilowatts or less AC power, in which case you'll want to focus on level one and level two procedures. But if more of your business is three, four, and five larger systems, then you want to focus on those. And of course, if you do a combination of both, then you want to flip back and forth between those 70-page explanation and the 74-page explanation, depending upon the specific project you're focusing on. Okay, let's go to the next slide, Ken. Number six, I don't even know what IEEE 200, 2800 means. I'm ashamed to admit, but all of you know me, so hopefully you'll forgive me. But this gives some explanation, the clear applicability, um, which specific clauses apply for sub-transmission connected projects. Again, page 22 at the bottom, level one and level two procedures, 23 of level three, four, and five on that larger doc, on those sections. I think it's sections four and five of the larger document. Next section, next slide. Um, did we skip over slide six? Maybe not. I guess I
Looks
can look.
like this is slide six,
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Okay,
term
slides,
six,
term
term.
seven and eight,
Yep.
inadvertent export in screens. Um, I think, again, I don't really understand this, but I think the 30-second is is better than it was. I think previously DTD had it set up to 200 milliseconds, and 30 seconds, I think, is a practical, it was a realistic change in terms of real life versus the 200 milliseconds, which I think DTE was being really, really picky and not necessarily realistic. So it's my understanding that lengthening of this to 30 seconds is helpful. But again, I'll leave it to you to have a greater understanding of this. And again, down below, for level one and level two, the more explanation is Appendix H of that 70-page document. And then there's also an Appendix H of the 74-page document, three, four, and five of that larger document that you have to link to. Okay, I'm just going to keep moving in case anybody has any questions or comments. Next slide is term nine, energy storage in the DG program. Um, this this is particularly important um, because this is addressing an issue that was brought up at the last October meeting where DTE was unilaterally including how much of a capacity of a battery. They were counting that towards the 110% of how big a system or how much electricity a homeowner or small business was using over the course of the year. They were including the capacity of a battery as a part of how big the actual solar system could be, which I know it pissed off a lot of businesses because a battery had nothing to do with how much power was being generated that needed to be generated in order to meet the 110%. So this has been a serious change. So now batteries will no longer be counted towards the total size of a small system, for homeowners and for small business. And again, um, this is now, if Ken could go back to the original memo, um, yeah, yeah, you'll see that the sixth section, this is where that information is contained within the sixth section. So that's a separate section that's in there for these two issues. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint. Thank you, Ken. Um, so okay, so let's go to the next. Yep, next slide. Um, and let's see. Okay, this is the section that addresses the other big issue that some of you all had last October, where DTE was just looking at the nameplate capacity of a solar panel and how many solar panels were put on the roof in terms of calculating whether you were hitting the 110%. But they weren't being realistic because depending upon where the solar panels are positioned on a roof, south, east, or west, that can have an impact on how much power is being generated. So again, this is a nice change so that now, depending upon the panel orientation, that now is taken into consideration in terms of how many panels will be necessary in order to meet the 110% of a homeowner or a small business. And so this is a good thing. And this is term number 10. I think I've never used Power Clerk. My guess, and I'm sure all of you know what Power Clerk is. I'm sure it's some type of permitting software or software that you plug in the key factors of your proposal project for your client, and then you can apparently now you will be they will this Power Clerk has been amended or changed to factor in the orientation of the panels. So again, I think this is a positive change, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or not. Okay, now okay, this is this is a this is a screw up on my part. I didn't I had the slides not in proper order. So let's scroll down until we find scroll term number 11. Yeah, there it is, interconnection. Um, I apologize for the slides not being in proper order. I realized that just a few minutes before this meeting. But the bottom line is that if you print out these slides, then you can put them in the proper order um, as you look at them. Anyway, so term number 11 is the interconnection review. Um, Again, you can look at this and understand it, hopefully understand it. Um, and hopefully that's an improvement over what previously occurred. Okay, let's move on to uh, terms 12 and 13. Now this is a screw up from EIBC. I should send Laura an email, but term number 11 should be term 12 and term 12 should be term 13. Um, But if you look under the 14-page document that I sent you that has the actual terms, the specific language, you will see that under term 12 there is a 2-year waiver on these fees. Um, and I don't know how that came about in the negotiations, but it's there. Now, the mutual indemnification that is actually term 13. So the first one's term 12. Mutual indemnification is term 13. And both of these terms are real short, literally one or two sentences in the 14-page term document. So hopefully they're not that difficult to understand um, for you. Again, I don't know it well enough to be able to even attempt to explain it. But the bottom line is that hopefully these are again positive changes. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. It should be slide 14, Ken. Yep, you got it. Perfect. Um, Public interconnection list queue. Um, Again, I don't know what all this means, but it's a reasonably short new term um, that you can look at it on the 14-page document. Again, this term isn't particularly long. It's just a couple paragraphs. So hopefully, when you read it over, you'll understand exactly what it means. And hopefully, again, this is a positive change. Okay, go to term 15, please. Yep, cost allocation. This is term 15. Um, Again, I don't really know what this is about, but you can look at it and hopefully you will understand it. Um, it looks as though, I mean, I'm just reading, I'm kind of glancing over at the longer version of term 15, but it looks as though the Public Service Commission and DTE, maybe Richter knows about this. They're going to be setting up a work group to talk about um, some more technical issues, talking about cost allocation, whatever. So if this is something of interest to any of you, I'm sure you could be a part of the work group, or at the very least, you could be kept on an email list. So as the work group meets, or in terms of sending out the agendas or slides or whatever information that DTE and others will produce, that you all can get access to it by signing up to be on the email list. Or if you want to send me an email that you want to be on this work group, I can do the work and get you on the list. Okay, let's go to term 16. Yeah, thanks, Ken. Term 16 is insurance. It's literally a one sentence thing. Um, so this is, as you see at the bottom, page 22 of level 3, 4, and 5 procedures. So this will be the 74-page document for larger solar projects, 150 kilowatt AC or larger. So I'm sure for those of you that do those kinds of solar projects, you'll probably have an understanding of the insurance issue discussion. Um, Next slide, 17. Um, Fast track and levels. Um, Again, this is a relatively short term agreement. Um, you can look on the 14-page document, um, and you can understand. I guess, again, look at pages 6 and 7, level 1 and level 2 down below on, I think that's section 4, and then 6 and 7, 3, 4, and 5, that's section 5 on the larger document. Um, this AC rating, I think, is another issue that I recall businesses bringing up. So hopefully that will mean something to all of you. And then going on to the next slide, RTU, slide 18. Um, so this is another term that's just a couple sentences. Um, it looks as though GTE is going to clarify that an RTU is is required for level 5 and maybe 3 and 4, depending upon a study. But look on page 41 below for more specific information or explanation for this. Um, and go to the next one, Ken, number 19, please. Um, I think this isn't, I think this is, they're all important. I'll just say that. But I think this is, um, a, I don't know if I want to say this is more important than the others, but I think this is an interesting one because rather than one of the complaints I heard last October from businesses is that DTE was very quick on rejecting a proposal for a project. And by that rejection, it forced all of you to have to start the process all over again, which ate up time and was frankly a pain. So I think that DTE has compromised and is willing to not immediately reject stuff. So they're depending upon the situation. So if you look on again, if you look on page 19, 1 and 2, or page 23, 4 and 5, or if you look at the 14-page document for term number 20, again, it's a relatively short term, but um, DTE is essentially saying is that if they think you're operating outside the terms of the interconnection agreement, but DTE doesn't think it's a huge problem, they are not going to they're not going to do an immediate disconnection. They're going to give the business 30 days to clean it up, fix it, amend it, whatever. Um, and then there there are some conditions where disconnection will occur, but hopefully these now become more extreme cases and not something that is a relatively minor problem, which I think is the first bullet point. The second bullet point gives 3 different situations where it may be more problematic and may require some more significant changes or whatever. So look this over, understand, have read pages 19 for 1 and 2, 20 for 3, 4, and 5. I mean, I'm not telling you what to do, of course. You guys know exactly what you're doing. But it sounds as though that there are some situations that you don't have to start over again. You just got to modify it. Then there are other situations which may require a more significant change. So just understand what the differences are. So that might have a serious, that might help you in terms of not having to start from the very beginning for some of these projects that you're working on. Okay. Um, and that's it for the term agreement. There's 19 of them, 14 pages long. And then this PowerPoint that EIBC put together that Laura was kind enough to share with me. And I don't have any pride in the sense that if EIBC can explain it, I'm not going to duplicate the wheel. But this document here, the document, the one I did put together, there is section, as Ken's got it on the screen. These are the 2 that were brought up last October that we've gone over. Term number 9 regarding the battery, and then term number 10 in terms of the angle of the panels. So, so, so these are nice changes that that DTE and the Public Service Commission and our allies agreed with. So hopefully this will be a nice blessing or a nice change for the businesses that do residential and small business solar. So I will stop there and take questions or comments. I hope but I'll make one final comment. I hope I've laid out this information in a user-friendly fashion that will help you navigate your way to understanding um, these new terms and these new interconnection rules. Um, my suggestion, if you haven't done it already, is to print out the PowerPoint, print out the 14-page term agreement, and then just flip back and forth. And then if you want to have more specific information, click on that link, and then you don't want to print all 200 pages of that massive document. What you want to do is click on that link, scroll down till you get to levels one, two, and three, scroll down to wherever you want to go to, and then you can just read it on your computer screen. And then if you want to print that specific section, then you can pick out the pages. But remember, once you open this link, the pages on the specific document are not going to be the ones that you'll want to print. You got to figure out the pages from the point of view of how it shows up on your computer screen in order to make sure you get the right pages for the right section. Um, I'm still kind of a paper guy, so that's always been a problem for me. I'm sure most of you probably don't need to print stuff out anymore. You can look at it on your screen, digest it, educate your staff, and then you can go from there. Anyway, I've talked enough. I will stop and take comments, questions, follow-ups, or whatever you want to say. Um, and so I'll go ahead, Dave.
Just, I'm curious if anyone has actually had experience yet with the panel orientation, 110% with DTE. We've not, but we're anxious to see if because we argued it with them for quite a time. Anybody have any experience with that yet? See if they're really when's implementation
Yeah.
date maybe is what we're
No,
on here.
it took effect. It took effect legally December 8th or December 5th, whatever the order came down.
Yeah,
Now, maybe in the real world, it might take it might take DTE a little bit of time to reconfigure Power Clerk or whatever that software is. But I think DTE had to move very quickly to implement these rules because, again, these rules were negotiated, so they had some advance warning. And they know from previous experience that once groups do come to a settlement, that the commission is likely to approve it. So the angling rule should be, you should not, DTE should be okay with that right now.
yep.
I haven't experienced that, Dave, for on DTE on, since December or whatever on DTE. I haven't had any that are, on
Close.
east-west routes where we're trying to max out right at 110% or anything like that. Not yet.
Worries. We'll put one in shortly.
I have been experiencing a lot more headaches than expected and then normal on Cat 3 DG.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's ever a
Going
t-
through these studies.
if there's ever a time that you guys would like to have a group conversation with the appropriate person at DTE, we can set that up. We haven't done it in a while, but we could do it if we needed to. So if any time business members would like, because I'm sure you guys know, I'm sure you guys call DTE or consumers all the time um, for specific issues. But if we wanted to have someone a little higher on the food chain at DTE or consumers that oversees these technocrats that you probably have to deal with, then we could do that if that would be helpful. Just let me know.
Yeah, in my experience, the last 6 months, give or take, when we have had issues on with DTE, which we are lately on Cat 3 stuff, but they've been perfectly willing and polite and helpful in having meetings and trying to solve the problems.
Right. They've come out to the sites. We're in
Yep.
the same situation with some of the schools and the county stuff.
Yep.
And it's all three plus.
Okay. Now, I don't know. Well, one thing I guess I'm speaking more to Ken on this one, since Ken's is in consumers turf. I don't know. These rules apply to
Mhm.
DTE. I don't know whether consumers went through a similar um, up updating of their interconnection rules. But again, without knowing anything better, I would assume they must have because the Public Service Commission tends to like consistent policy across the board. So, in other words, I don't think they would allow consumers to deduct the size of a battery in terms of calculating how big a solar system you all could design for a homeowner in consumers turf. Or the angling stuff must also apply to consumers because it certainly wouldn't be good policy from the part of the commission to have one set of rules for DTE and a different set of rules for consumers. But the ones we went over today, they're for DTE. So, you know, so
And I really am kicking myself. I'm glad we recorded it, um, but so I can share it. But our interconnection person, Cassidy, is really, really good and really knows these details better than I do. So I should have invited her. Shoot, but good thing we're recording it.
right, right.
Yeah, put that link out, John. Be great.
Hmm.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I mean, has this been helpful? Okay. Is that
Absolutely. Yeah, this is Jordan from Augustine Solar. We're more on the west side. Work mostly with Consumers Energy, and they've been flexible. And the way that they've kind of accommodated this was they have their internal calculation, and then they're willing to accept like external production analysis. So even last year, we'd be able to do like a east-west project and do our best to substantiate, hey, this project isn't going to produce as much as your formula says. Let us install a couple more panels or such. So neat to see how DTE is implementing this.
sounds good? It's good to hear, Jordan. Again, if we ever wanted to set up a meeting with consumers, someone a little higher up, we could do that as well. Um,
Thank you.
so GLREA is here to serve you. That's our role is to serve our business members and our individual members. And so, however, and my goal as executive director is and as well as the staff, Marshall and Lexi, as well as the board of directors, we want to set up a situation where the policy, whether it's regulatory or legislative policy, is supports the expansion of wind and solar and geothermal in Michigan. In other words, we want to set up a situation where all of you can have a smooth runway to get clients and to sell solar. Turn loose the private sector. That's what we're all about. And so we're here to serve you. So just keep us posted if we can ever be of any help. Um, are there any other issues that any of you want to bring up separate from interconnection rules that you would like to see GLREA devote some time and attention to? Um, okay, if you can't,
We
go ahead.
maybe one question if I'm in a group of installers here. Um, we've done a couple projects, battery projects in DTE. And unlike Consumers Energy, they require an external disconnect that does not disconnect the whole house from the array or the whole house from the grid. Um, so we're having to do a couple rework projects to add an additional disconnect that's externally mounted. Um, but we haven't. We assume that there's no workaround. It's just substantiate their pushbacks and do what they ask.
So you're saying that they're requiring you to have an external disconnect so that if the grid goes down, that the battery system will keep operating for the homeowner.
They essentially want an external disconnect to isolate our system from the main service panel, as well as a whole home disconnect that isolates the home from the grid. And
Are
in
you, Jordan, are you asking that from the perspective of having that disconnect at all, or the fact that it's has to be external?
I think it's having to be external, and then just a whole home disconnect does not comply or does not satiate their needs. Um, I That's at least what I've come to learn, is that a visible lockable safety switch used as a whole home disconnect, because that disconnects the entire house. DTE is not happy with that. They want it just to isolate the battery and PV system. I think that's correct.
Yeah, in my experience, and that's pretty standard and expected, but it gets complicated and
Okay.
and it changes all the time, and there's different utilities and different people at the utilities that make different exceptions, and it's for me, there have been, like with consumers, if you can't have a external lockable fusible disconnect within like 5 feet of the meter or whatever it is, then they're pretty reasonable about saying, okay, put the disconnect over there and put up a placard that at the meter that
Yeah.
says disconnects over there. And DTE, at least for me, doesn't really doesn't really have that flexibility, or doesn't offer that flexibility, and can be difficult sometimes, especially when they require the disconnect to be external, but the meter's inside, but they need it to be within 5 feet, and some of their own rules can be contradictory. But I know that's not super helpful, but just some thoughts on what I experienced.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Well, unless there's any other comments, I don't want to take up any more of your time over lunch. I appreciate you joining us for this call. I hope it's been helpful. Again, feel free to email myself or Marshall or Richter or Ken. Ken's on our board, GLREA board, and so you can always email Ken too. And if you have any further questions regarding these interconnection rules, let me know. So I hope this has been helpful. And I'm going to stop the recording and I